Hello everyone, I'm Samuel Ryman. This is Samuel's Racing Show, but I'm not on my own this week. I'm joined by a fellow commentator over on our iRacing channel, the Global Sim Racing channel, Mr. Joe Peak.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Sam. I always love getting to do these with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a while, but we did a couple of episodes in the past, and I know you and I have always loved discussing open wheel racing, and so I thought, what a better time to come and talk to you, because there's been a lot of it going on recently, thankfully, after absolutely none for like the past 6 months or whatever. But we've had Formula One, we've had IndyCar, we have Formula E about to finish up their season over the next 10 days, and we've had quite some exciting races recently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's honestly what's made up for it some is we had that long wait, but pretty much every single race has been phenomenal so far, both in IndyCar and in F1. I've been enjoying the hell out of it.
I have too. People who know me will know that I would prefer things to be a little bit different on the basis that I'm
Of
a bit
course.
of a Ferrari fan. And Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton keep doing this thing called winning, Joe, whether he's on four wheels or three.
Yeah, and I know honestly, I even though I've been a fan of Hamilton and I've liked seeing his success, I have to say that for the past maybe 3 seasons or so, I've really agreed with those that say I'd like to see some more variety, see some teams that are able to keep Mercedes more in check. And we got that for a bit, but it seems like it's kind of back to how it was in the early days where there's really nobody that can touch them anymore.
No, I mean, obviously Max Verstappen could have won that race, but I mean, it would have been lucky had he won it. It was lucky that Lewis Hamilton did win it. But again, we're going into the next British Grand Prix coming up, and I don't see any reason why Lewis Hamilton, or at the very least Mercedes, aren't going to win it again.
Yeah, honestly, I think the closest that we can hope for probably is a good battle between both Hamilton and Bottas. And considering what we saw with the tires, I think there's at least still some randomness in the air, if you will. That some unpredictability, I guess I should say, that could happen in this race because it seems like tire management is going to be incredibly important.
Absolutely. So we're 4 races into the season. Granted, we're talking about Formula One here. We'll get to IndyCar in a moment. Granted, Mercedes have won all 4 races, but they haven't all been snoozers. Obviously, the last 5 laps of the most recent race was quite exciting, and the season opening round at Austria was bonkers and kind of gave us the impression that we would be in for a chaotic season. And we could still be in for a chaotic season because there are going to be some new tracks coming up. Honestly, Joe, when I look at the track configurations of Imola, of Mugello, they don't look like the tracks that are going to be the most conducive to good racing, but I'm still excited for them because the teams are going to them with pretty much no notebooks.
Yeah, well, in the case of Imola, at least, very outdated notebooks. It's been, what, 15, 14 years, something around there, since they last went. And, yeah, sometimes even if tracks aren't as great for racing, I feel like that's something maybe F1 could hopefully pick up on a little bit, is that variety is the spice of life. And if we switch up the schedule every now and then, that's honestly going to add a lot more interest. It might not always produce great racing, but at least if you're keeping it fresh and new, you get audiences tuning in a lot more.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think these races at the new tracks, particularly the one in Portugal, which I think is an interesting race circuit, they are going to generate interest just because people aren't going to know what kind of racing we're going to expect. Because, of course, the racing up front might not be too interesting, but throughout midfield in Formula One, throughout the entire hybrid V6 turbo DRS era, we've always had good midfield racing. Formula One still has a fantastic package. It's just the problem that at the top end of a package, it's the same team winning again and again.
Yeah, exactly. And the mid pack actually surprises me quite a bit the way things have shaken up. I guess I shouldn't be considering the drama that we have going on around Racing Point. But you look at their improvement based on last season. You look at Renault having a bit of a resurgence and looking like they're doing fairly well. And I am a bit biased. I know you're a Ferrari fan. Well, I'm a McLaren fan. And seeing them up and competitive again and getting podiums in the last couple seasons is hugely encouraging to me. And just glad to see them kind of have a chance at giving some of these newer drivers really a shot at getting the results I think their talent deserves.
I don't mind McLaren. It's not the early 2000s anymore. They're not the direct rival of Ferrari. But I do want to bring this up, Joe, because I've had... I disagree with a lot of people who think Ferrari is a complete tank of a car right now. Charles Leclerc has finished third on 2 different occasions this season. Granted, both of those occasions were chaotic races and he lucked into that third place finish. But he's been putting himself in position, to capitalize on those moments. He's kind of made his own luck there. I'm not convinced that the Ferrari is a horribly slow car. I'm almost tempted to say I think with Charles Leclerc behind the wheel, it's still a very good car.
I see you skirting around what I think my mind and your mind is going to.
Yep.
If anything, this is a testament that Leclerc is the real deal. Whenever there's a brand new talent coming in, I'm always a little bit skeptical. I like to cheer on the underdog and see people, get their first results, first wins, first podiums and things like that. But until that becomes a pattern and there's consistency, it's always kind of, like you said, the little bit of luck plays into racing and things like that. And 3 seasons now that we've been seeing Leclerc driving not only very well compared to what it seems like the car can do, but compared to both of his teammates up to this point, Raikkonen and Vettel. So I'd say that I don't know if I would say it's another Verstappen scenario, but it does seem like with him kind of refining the edges and getting the rough points nice and smoothed up, that I think he could be a champion someday.
I very much hope so, because I think, let's see, I'm coming to terms with the fact that Lewis Hamilton probably will beat Michael Schumacher's 7 world titles, but I'm not sure Lewis Hamilton will still be winning the championship in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. I think Leclerc and Verstappen could have made something happen by then, but I could be wrong. Who knows? There's no stopping that guy right now, Hamilton. So let's address the elephant in the room in that conversation there, Joe. Sebastian Vettel, he's still got talent. He proved that in Hungary when his experience helped him make a good tyre call that got him a decent finish in comparison to what Leclerc was able to do. But if you are the people making the decisions over at Racing Point, going on Aston Martin, Racing Point going on Aston Martin, who do you want as your drivers for 2021?
I don't think that's so much a Racing Point decision, though, or Aston Martin decision, so much as it is Vettel's. I'm personally, emotionally, I would go for Sergio Perez because I'm a bigger fan of his. But if I was running the team and it was my money on the line, I would probably go for Vettel because he's definitely more proven. He's won multiple championships. He's won races. But the reason I say that is because Vettel has a family now. And every interview I've seen of him, it's not that I don't think it's that he's lost the fervor or the zest for racing. It just seems like I think life has kind of hit him and he's maybe thinking about what's important. He's achieved a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of said, you know what, I had a good career. It may have been a little shorter than people expected, but maybe I should bow out and say I'm a 4-time champion. There's very few F1 drivers who've ever done that in the world, and say that's good enough.
I think the one thing Vettel still wanted to prove was that he could win a world championship with Ferrari. He wanted to emulate Michael Schumacher, and now he realizes that that's not going to happen. That being said, I think there's too much going on, I think, between him and Racing Point, that I think he is going to go there for at least one season to see what happens. I hope that's not at the expense of Sergio Perez, but we will wait and see. If the lineup is Vettel and Perez, I think that could be an intriguing lineup. Because I've got to be honest, I've never given Perez the credit that he deserved, but I was listening to the Beyond the Grid podcast the other day. I forget who pointed it out, but someone said, you look at all the races in the hybrid eras, who's pretty much the only driver who repeatedly is able to get podium finishes that's not in one of the top 3 cars? And that's Sergio Perez.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I agree, and I've noticed that since his first podium. Honestly, you remember when he did it with Sauber back when Alfa Romeo were called that, and that was at Malaysia, I believe, trying to almost take the win away from Fernando Alonso at the time. So I knew the talent was there. I think his stock went down a little bit when he had his fallow years at McLaren, which he went right at the time that they started going downhill. So he gets overlooked a little bit because he's not terribly flashy most times. He gets those good results. He tends to look after the car, at least when he's not having trouble with his teammate. But I think at least if he does get replaced, that's a good sign that he's going to be able to find a drive somewhere because they know he's a safe and fast pair of hands. Now, unfortunately, my fear is that might wind up being one of the lower teams. He might wind up in a slower car. Hopefully that won't mean that his career starts going away as well. But I have confidence that he's going to stay in the sport.
Well, we shall wait and see. Drew, you and I, myself being a Ferrari fan, and you, like you say, being a bit more on the McLaren, Mercedes side of things, we have our differences, but there's one thing we both have the same, and that's that we both have a ticket to the 2020 running of the Indianapolis 500.
I guess I was going to say we did have the tickets, but
yes.
I guess we still do have the tickets. It's just we can't go now.
Exactly. It's just it's only a piece of paper now. But it does transition. It's the best segue I could find for us to get to talking about IndyCar. And obviously a bit of disappointing news. Well, not only the fact that there won't be fans at the Indy 500, which is disappointing but understandable, but also the fact that the Mid-Ohio doubleheader was pretty much scratched off. And it's sad to see that in these days when NASCAR and Formula One have done a pretty good job at being able to add races to their schedule, that IndyCar's struggling a little bit.
Yeah, some of it, it's been such a mixed bag in that realm because it does seem to be, to a degree, about the events making money and things like that. But I also get the sense that some of it is a little bit due to safety concerns and things like that. You think about Pocono and whatnot. So I feel like there's kind of a complicated problem there for them to try and figure out. And it is a little bit disconcerting. But at the same time, it seems like IndyCar has probably got the most popularity it's had since the split and the most clout that it's been able to claw back since those fallow period, since the bad times, I guess, as an IndyCar fan, I could say. So I honestly don't know what to think about the fact that they are losing races. Hopefully this is mostly just due to what we've got with COVID and whatnot. And come 2021, we'll see a schedule that's once again robust. Because if you look at it this way, they brought back a lot of classic tracks. You think Laguna Seca returning, Portland also coming back. So I think that those are at least showing that their priorities are in the right place, and there are tracks that see and venues that see the value in hosting new races.
Yeah, I believe Watkins Glen, Road America, Richmond, and Phoenix have all been new additions. Some haven't exactly stuck around, but within the last 5 years or so. And like you say, though, it's no fluke that IndyCar is starting to build up popularity again. NBC Sports are doing a good job of covering it. And also, that the management of the series has changed a little bit, and they've been making steps in the right direction. They've been listening to the fans and trying their best to heed to the fans' requests of getting these great tracks back and all that. And also, one thing that I know you've been wanting to see in recent years is a bit of a changing of the guard in IndyCar, younger blood coming in, because until about 5 years ago or so, it was the same drivers pretty much doing the racing that we've seen since the early 2000s.
Exactly. And what's cool is it's not even just young drivers and young blood coming in. It's talent that's been kind of looking for a place to go. We were talking a little bit earlier about Felix Rosenqvist. It was often pointed out when he showed up, he was successful pretty much everywhere he went in racing. So when he came to IndyCar, the expectations were high. And even though it looked good at the start, and then it maybe kind of took him a bit of tripping up to really find himself, he's definitely come to the fore now, and he's got his own. But you've also got the likes of Colton Herta, who's quite strong. Obviously, we are seeing, well, unfortunately, we've lost Robert Wickens, but you never know if maybe his recovery would allow him to someday get back into an Indy car. He's been working hard, but he came in and made a splash and showed himself to be an incredible talent. Yeah, and as much as I love some of the older guys, I love Tony Kanaan and I love Hinchcliffe. I'm actually a big Hinchcliffe fan. But him losing his seat actually didn't turn out to be that bad of a thing, because I'm actually just as big of a fan of him in the booth, to be honest, because he does some great commentary. So I think these guys moving aside and becoming mentors, taking other roles in IndyCar, not only opens doors, but it brings fresh insight and brings us new things to these other jobs that also need to be filled that have been taken by the same people.
Well, let's go ahead and plug it right now. If you'd like to see the likes of Tony Kanaan or Sage Karam or Robert Wickens still racing, tune into the Global Sim Racing channel, because we've had them all within the past couple of months.
Exactly,
yeah. There is one old guy who has stuck around though, Joe, and he seems to be doing pretty good still, and that's Scott Dixon.
Whew. Wow, Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another driver that's certainly going to leave on his own terms, because the incredible success that he's had, even now into, I guess this is, he's turning 40 or has turned 40 recently. And that just is, considering the physical strength that IndyCar takes. I know we talk a lot about the physical strength that F1 takes, and we have to remember those have power steering, and IndyCars do not. So you have similar G-forces and yet no power steering, and still have to have all the mental acuity and everything, and yet Scott is still winning like gangbusters. It's got to be just jaw-dropping for the other drivers even, to see him achieve what he can at his age and have that consistency. There is no doubt that he will probably go down as one of the greats, and I could see him related to guys like Rick Mears, who, if I'm honest, Scott Dixon isn't, again, I mentioned drivers being flashy or not. He's not very flashy, and I've never been super wowed. I have a ton of respect for his talent, but when he wins, it's kind of like a golf clap sort of win for me. And that's the thing I think that sets him apart is it's very calculated wins typically. He doesn't often have these drives where he thrashes through the field and is wringing the car completely out and whatnot. He uses strategy. He keeps his head about him, and he keeps racking up the championships and wins.
The one thing I love about Scott Dixon's success is, much like you say, how his race wins come quietly sometimes. So have his championships also. And what I'm saying is that he's a five-time champion of a sport, and never has anyone said, "Well, I'm not going to watch IndyCar because Scott Dixon wins all the time." You know, he just finds a way to win races and win championships. Sometimes with you kind of overlooking him, and then he's there at the end of the day. But he didn't do that this year. He came out right out of a barn, didn't he? Winning the opening 3 rounds of the season, which I think is massively impressive given the variety of racetracks that IndyCar goes to.
And I think that also goes back to his strength as well, is when there is a lack of testing and a lack of practice time, like they have this season because of COVID, he's suddenly shown himself to be incredibly valuable. He's been a test driver, all these other things. So I think this shows how much Scott is an arrive and drive type of driver. You put him in the car, whatever the situation is, he's just going to make do. And that's how you win those championships and win races. That things are not always going to be ideal. And the best drivers can make that lemonade out of the lemons.
So we have, like you say, Formula One, where they go into some tracks that they haven't known before, they haven't been to before, haven't been to for a while. When they go to Imola, they're only going to have 1 day of practice, which is going to be massively interesting to see. We have IndyCar, which likewise hasn't been doing a whole lot of practice. And then we have Formula E as well, another open wheel series. But they're about to get quite familiar with the same track, Joe, because they're finishing their championship with 6 races on the same circuit. Now, it's been a little while since the last Formula E race, so I would have to brush up on my research to remember all the stories that are going on. But I do know John-Eric Verne and Tetrita have been one of the more dominant forces in the past couple of seasons. But this season, they've had a couple of big new manufacturers come in, including Mercedes, of course, which, you know, led to a bunch of different storylines at the start of the season. And I think it's going to be interesting seeing how that championship wraps up.
Same. And I'm glad to see it wrap up because I've been wondering that for a while, what's going to happen. It got interrupted, unlike the others, right in the middle of the season since they do it over a winter period, typically starting. So I was a little afraid that it would be kind of a shame if they wrapped up the season when they didn't know they were wrapping up the season at the last race that they held. It's nice to have some closure and have drivers and fans as well to be able to have that last race, quote unquote, and sort things out. And it's kind of nice having it at Berlin. That's been one of my more favorite tracks. I like the street courses. Some are better than others, but Berlin was always kind of unique in the way that it seemed set up for better racing and had kind of more interesting corners than your typical bunch of 90-degree left-handers, a couple chicanes, and a hairpin thrown in.
Yeah, I guess it's nice that they had that Berlin, which I believe is an airport racetrack, to fall back on, considering, as you mentioned, most of their tracks are at city centres, which I suppose it makes sense during the coronavirus that they...
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea to try and put on the race in cities, especially because one of Formula E's major components in what it's doing is it wants to get its races out there to the fans. Formula E is doing its races at cities so that it can bring in crowds who maybe haven't seen racing before because, you know, they've stereotyped it as, you know, something that someone who likes to get down and dirty with oil and grease all over their arms in the garage in the back of a barn, you know, that kind of fan. And now they're trying to reach out and say, hey, no, you know, you don't have to be that kind of person to enjoy motor racing. Look at our stuff. It's futuristic, it's clean, it's energy, it's efficient. You know, they're trying to branch out to new people, go to locations that other series may have not necessarily gone to in the past. And I think they do have a good thing going. And now that the series is starting to bring big teams to the series, though, I'd like to see more drivers, more big-name drivers go there. And I know there have been big-name drivers go there, but I guess what I'm trying to say, Joe, is a lot of people who end up racing in Formula E, a lot of drivers who end up racing there, I think they're racing it because they can't find a ride somewhere else. I would love to see Formula E get to the point where that's not why people are going there. Drivers are going there because, that was their goal. They wanted to grow up to be a Formula E driver.
Exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned the whole growing up to be a Formula E driver, because that's immediately where my mind went, is it might take a while to reach that, because we might have to wait until we get a few people that grow up watching it. The fans that are, in their early teens or preteens and things like that, that are watching and are race fans and say, wow, this is so cool. I want to aspire to that. And when that happens, that's going to be an interesting day to see that evolution of the series. Until then, the unfortunate truth, I think, is that it has to fight the image that it's had put on it by a lot of people, that's still seen as less desirable, as some people kind of see it as a bit of a joke, which is a shame, because you and I have both seen the racing's fantastic. It's an incredible adaptation of the sport. I don't like all the features, mind you, but I'm willing to overlook all of them, or look most of them, just because the racing is so good. It's some of the best racing we've had in the last half decade, if I'm frank.
While we're on the subject of fans, Joe, I might be putting you on the spot a little bit with this question, but you and I are both on iRacing a lot, and one thing that's great about iRacing, is a lot of drivers engage there with social media, and you get to know them a little bit more. And we do have a diverse amount of racing drivers through virtual racing. And of course, diversity has been a bit of a talking point throughout 2020, not just in the motor racing world, but in the world as a whole. I wanted to get your thoughts, if you wanted to share them, over, the unity that we've seen in NASCAR and the unity that Formula One is trying to accomplish, but at the same time has been running into a little bit of issues with, some drivers having to have discussions with the likes of Lewis Hamilton to kind of help get the message across there.
Yeah, and it's complicated, unfortunately. I do want to start by saying, since you mentioned NASCAR, they have surprised me the most with the steps that they have been taking, which has been fantastic to see. And they have been, credit where credit is due, they have had their diversity program for a little bit now, even before this. But to see the recent changes, such as the banning of the Confederate flag, I think are great steps forward. They've been much needed. And truth be told, in these past few months, I myself have been trying to educate myself a lot. I've been doing a lot of reading and listening to audiobooks on the topic of inclusivity and race, especially in our country. And it's opened my eyes on a lot of things. And one of the things that I'm watching with the Formula One stuff is I feel like that the attention is maybe in the wrong place, with wanting the drivers to take a knee and be all on the same page there, because you're not gonna probably get them all on the same page, and that's probably not going to do as much as some of the other efforts that Lewis is doing, which is to try and change things institutionally. A lot of the authors that I've been reading and listening to have pointed out a lot of these issues are less about the personal stuff, the personal views, and more about what is happening in the bigger picture. It doesn't absolve people of personal views of racism and sexism and homophobia and other things. And those are still things that we need to try and fight and educate people about. But the changes mainly come from the top down, if you will, that when a culture has things that are ingrained in us, we have a hard time affecting change by trying to do it from person to person. It has to be holistic, if you will, which I'm sure sounds hippy-dippy, but it's definitely some stuff worth reading up on. And if anybody does want to reach out to me and would like some reading material, I'd love to recommend them.
And the best way to get in contact with you, Drew?
You can hit me up on Twitter, obviously. It is the Joe Peak, TheJoePeak on Twitter. And of course, my email is open as well. Same thing, thejoepeak@gmail.com or joe.peak@globalsimracingchannel.com.
Yep, and my name is Samuel Ryman. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, hopefully you know how to spell my name. I'm on Twitter at twitter.com/Samuel Ryman. And also this video and a bunch of other stuff I'm doing is on samuelsracingcorner.com, which has a great new logo now designed by Tyler Graff of Graphics Esports. If you watch a Lionheart IndyCar series, or in fact if you watch any series on iRacing, there's a good chance that Tyler may have helped design one or more of the cars in there, so I wanted to give him a shout out. Hey, and while we're doing shout outs, thank you HyperX for this headset. I use it doing my Lionheart IndyCar races, and it helps me listen to all the cars around and not get in as many crashes, which is always a good thing. I have been in one crash. Oh, no, I've got to go back. I was in a crash in the first race of the season. James Kahula ran over me. And at the time, we'd been talking about becoming teammates. It took us like 8 races into the season to finally become teammates. I guess I had to forgive him a little bit. But we're all good now. Well, Joe, we got to talk about Formula One, IndyCar, Formula E again, and, it's a good time to be an open-wheel racing fan. I think it's a good time to be a racing fan of any kind, because there's so much of it going on. I'm really looking forward to the NASCAR race at the Daytona Road Course in a couple of weeks, although I hate that last chicane is in there, but I know why.
Same. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Well, Joe, anything else you'd like to say before we let you go on your way?
Again, thank you for having me on. Thanks for picking my brain. And I'm sorry if we went on maybe a little longer than you anticipated, but I really appreciate it because it's always a lot of fun to get to talk racing. And have a good weekend and week, I guess, watching lots and lots of racing, man.
Yeah, no, I'll actually be at... I'm blanking on the name of a racetrack right now, but the Cars Tour is racing in Virginia this weekend, and so I'll be helping doing some camera work for that this weekend. So if you'd like to check out some late model racing, some good old-fashioned short-track late model racing this weekend, subscribe to pitrow.tv and check out some Cars Tour action this weekend from a speedway in Virginia, which was somewhere wrote down on my calendar.
You'll put it in text on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime I forget how to do something, I end up having to do it in post edits. I can't get my notes from here; they're all the way on the other side of a run. All right, I think we're going downhill pretty quick here, Joe. So let's stand up and say toodaloo, and we'll see you all around.
Thanks.